I was hanging out with some friends at a popular outdoor mall in my city. Suddenly, a huge crowd of people turned the corner and started walking down the street together quickly. It wasn't a flash mob or a protest, just a massive group of about 300 or 400 people walking together. The people on the edges of the group were calling out to bystanders like us, inviting us to join them. But there was no sign of where they were going or why, no explanations or signs or anything. It was really strange. As we stood there, more and more people joined the crowd out of curiosity, and I said, "Why not? Let's go." So we attached ourselves to the side of the group and followed it for about 10 minutes through the mall. We ended up in a small park with a sculpture garden and a fountain. But by then, there were way too many people to fit in the park, at least 1,000 packed tightly together. The guy who was leading the parade approached this young woman who was sitting on one of the benches there, who was looking pretty bewildered at being surrounded by hundreds of strangers. Another young guy who was with him, sort of a ringleader type, turned to face us as a group and started to shout, sing, "Lean on me," with no idea what was going on. The rest of the group joined in until there were enough people to fill an auditorium, all singing "Lean on Me" together to this complete stranger of a girl in the park. We got about a minute in to the end of the second chorus before the guy's friend shushed us by raising both hands, and everyone went dead silent. Then the leader of the procession got down on one knee and proposed to his girlfriend. She said yes. The crowd erupted in cheers, and everyone started to disperse, gradually moving away from the park. It was a beautiful moment, and I felt lucky to have been a part of it, even if I was just a curious bystander. This experience is one of my favorite memories because it reminded me that we're all connected. Without knowing where we were going or why, we became part of something bigger than ourselves. We joined in, sang, and celebrated with strangers, simply because it felt right. It was a beautiful moment of human connection, and I feel grateful to have been a part of it. Story 2. I was browsing stores on Upper Street in Merton, London, about 6 years ago. It was a sunny summer day, and I was killing time by walking from one shop window to another. I stopped to admire some boots, and that's when I saw him. In the reflection of the window, I noticed a young guy with long blonde hair, around 20 years old. He suddenly looked really upset, like he was in physical distress. I turn around and he's blocking the path of an old man. The old man is wearing some old-fashioned hat and has a gray beard, looking equally stressed about this kid not letting him pass. I'm just about to tell the kid to stop being a dick and get out of the way. 2 or 3 other people have now stopped around us, as it's quite an odd-looking scene, but all of a sudden the kid finds his voice. With tears in his eyes, he says, "I'm Miker Flo, son of something and something Flo." The young man's words shook me to my core. "You're the one who babysat my sister and me when we were kids," he accused. "Your parents are deaf, and you sexually abused us for years." I was stunned. "There's no way I'm letting you go this time," he spat. But I knew he had the wrong person. I tried to reason with him, but he wouldn't listen. A crowd started to gather, drawn in by the commotion. More people joined, curious about the scene unfolding before them. As the situation escalated, someone in the crowd suggested, "If you're not who he says you are, just prove it, show us a credit card or something," but the old man refused. I tried to walk away from the scene, but a passerby intervened, saying, "You're not going anywhere until the police arrive." They calmly took hold of the old man's arm, ensuring he wouldn't leave until the situation was resolved. Story 3. When I was in college, a friend of mine hosted a house party that got really crowded. The house was pretty big, and most of the party was happening in the living room, which had carpet. They had removed the furniture to make space for the DJ and all the people dancing. I was there, surrounded by the noise and energy of the party. The DJ was an old friend I used to break dance with, but he was playing popular songs to keep the party going. Now, let me tell you about Paul, the main character of this story. Paul is that guy you always see at bars and clubs, dancing really badly, but thinking he's an amazing dancer. He's also very cocky and full of himself. If any girl cheered for someone else's dancing, Paul would suddenly appear and try to outdance them, usually ending with the other guy leaving the room to avoid Paul's silly dance moves and show-offs. A couple hours later, my DJ friend and I decide to spin some old-school hip-hop that we could break dance till the crowd starts to get into it and a circle forms. I step in to take a ton in the circle, and about 30 seconds in, I see Paul at the edge of the circle looking like a dog on a leash, waiting to break into the circle and show everyone who's boss. I finish my thing and get to the edge just in time to see that Paul had cleared himself a runway into the circle. And then something amazing happened. Paul took a running start towards the circle and tried to do a front flip to impress everyone, but he had drunk too much and misjudged his abilities. Instead of landing on his feet, he flipped too far and couldn't control his body. He ended up doing a weird worm-like move, with his legs curling up over his head and his body sliding across the carpeted floor on his forehead. It was a hilarious and awkward moment, and everyone was in shock. I spit out my drink and laughed like a little girl, as did pretty much everyone else in the room. I seriously have never laughed that hard in my life. I cried so hard it gave me a headache. Later that night, I overheard Paul trying to flirt with a girl at the party. She noticed the rug burns all over his forehead and face and asked what happened. Paul tried to explain, but all he could say was, "We were having a dance circle and I." Before the girl burst out laughing and said, "You front flip guy," she couldn't stop laughing, and Paul walked away, embarrassed. I later found out that he had to go to the hospital for a concussion, but I think it was worth it. It was a hilarious moment that I'll never forget. Story 4. Man, I had to register to say that the op was well told and awesome. I have a story that is strangely similar but not nearly as good. Might as well tell it anyways. I spent time at my uncle's ranch in Modoc, California. There were many dogs and cats, but our cat Mercedes was the boss. She was a special cat, a calico Manx with a short tail and hair growing from her ears. She was tough and a skilled hunter, catching and eating big squirrels. She'd crunch them up head first, loud and fierce. Mercedes was the queen of the ranch, and she knew it. She'd sit around, squinting at everyone like they were tiny bugs. I remember when my uncle brought home a new girlfriend, and Mercedes didn't like her one bit. She ran up to the poor woman and bit her toe so hard that it started bleeding. One day, we were working on a machine called a skidder near the pole barn at my uncle's ranch. A friend of my uncle's arrived in a truck with a pit bull in the back. The dog saw Mercedes sitting calmly in the middle of the area, looking at him with her usual disdain. The dog got excited, barking and spinning around in circles in the truck. Mercedes just blinked a few times and stayed still, like a statue. The new guy apologized, saying, "Sorry about my dog, he loves to chase cats." My uncle laughs, says, "Sorry about your dog if he gets after that cat." Guy has a look of incredulity. It's plain he's thinking, bullshit. Uncle laughs again, says turn him loose. Dog is spraying spittle out of his mouth, ready to eat that cat. Mercedes hasn't moved, still squinting like she had zero fucks to give. Guy says, "Okay," and then snaps his fingers and the dog burns rubber over the side of the truck and heads full speed for the cat. Mercedes remained still until the last moment. Then she sprang into the air, landing on the dog's face like a fierce predator. She attacked the dog's face with her claws, causing it to shriek in pain. I've never heard a dog make such terrifying sounds. Mercedes quickly jumped off the dog, which ran under the barn, yelping and whimpering. It took the owner half an hour to coax the dog out from under the barn, its face badly scratched and bleeding. Meanwhile, Mercedes calmly returned to her spot, squinting at everyone, as if nothing had happened.